American politicians too. So we have this foreign influence across the board. I care about all of.
You just jumped in to the middle of a great episode of the Timcast IRL show. Tim is kind of debating Elijah. Elijah does a good job just saying, here's my take. Here's, you can have your take. I disagree. But Tim's going on, and don't go anywhere. Get some popcorn. It's about 5 minutes or so. Tim goes on an absolutely epic rant describing U.S. foreign policy.
And support have to do with that, though? I'm saying
Australia is a vassal state of the United States. Right now, we've got what do we send an aircraft carrier down to Australia? We've got
a lot of bases down there. Yeah.
We've got a strike force team up with Australia that is now patrolling the South China Sea because of the Strait of Taiwan. Russia and China are now engaging in joint drills over that specifically. Let's go back in time. There's way too much back in time to go through, but we can start with like the Mujahideen. The Soviets trying to move into Afghanistan, the U.S. trying to prevent them from getting access to it. So the U.S., Russia's moving to Afghanistan, so the U.S. supports the Mujahideen. Ultimately, it becomes Al-Qaeda. Then we get Al-Qaeda, who gets mad at us, and a lot of other stuff happens. Let's go back now to 2009. And it's impossible to cover all of U.S. foreign Middle Eastern policy, but we can start with the 2000s, Iraq and Afghanistan, a pincer move to surround Iran with U.S. military bases, cutting off their trade routes from the east and the west. We now have the Houthis in Yemen. We have the Red Sea trying to gain control over that major thoroughfare and trade route. Iran, of course, engaging in conflict by supporting the Houthi rebels. The U.S. is trying to get cheaper energy into Europe, competing with Russia. Russia controls about 20% of the natural gas going into Europe through Gazprom. That runs through Ukraine. So U.S. wants Ukraine in our sphere of influence, begins a soft power campaign. Russia resists. Negotiations happen in Ukraine. Russia loses the soft power battle, which is the U.S. supporting in various ways the overthrowing of Yanukovych, the ouster of the established Ukrainian.
So that all of that it didn't force, but created the environment for Russia to make their move. Epic rant so far. He's going to keep going.
Government for a more favorable government, which is what the United States does. Now, why is the U.S. so obsessed with Ukraine? There's a lot of reasons. First, Gazprom. If we control Ukraine, we can then restrict how Russia is getting their natural gas into Europe and help offset the price gouging that the West and NATO believes is happening. Why is that important? In 2009, it was reported that the United States was planning to overthrow the Syrian government because Bashar al-Assad told the United States specifically, you will not build a Qatar-Turkey gas pipeline through our country, which would offset the Russian gas monopoly. They had about 20%, but they control a bit more than that through various means. The Nord Stream, of course.
Then you can see how it comes to Nord Stream 2 and allegedly who took care of that real quick or was a part of it.
That's why the West blew it up. So when the U.S. goes to Syria and says, we want to send from Qatar through Syria and Turkey a gas pipeline, which would give Europe access to cheap natural gas and force Russia to compete, Syria responded, Russia is an ally of ours, and we will not allow you to do that. Conversely, what we will do is Russia and then Syria made an agreement with Iran to tap the same natural gas field and send the pipeline through Iraq and Syria into Europe to strengthen the monopoly. Then what happens? Whoopsie daisy, the Syrian civil war breaks out. Just so happens the U.S. thinks Assad is a warmonger who gasses his own people and needs to be stopped. They failed there. The point is, the U.S. foreign policy.
And then that ties into Pakistan. I just did a very brief comment a while back on a video on the Iran and Pakistan thing, where Pakistan wants to finish a natural pipeline, gas pipeline on their side of the country, on the east side. And what does that have to do? There's no sanctions on them from us. The sanctions are on Iran. So the U.S. is like, well, you're helping them, even though it's in their country. They don't want another way for natural resources to get out of there.
So they state, whether it's true or not, is that we need cheaper energy in Europe to allow Europe to expand, to compete with the expanding Chinese economic bloc. How do we get that? The problem is most of the natural gas, which is used for economic expansion, energy, is controlled by Russia. Russia's jacking up the prices. We need to get cheaper energy to grow faster. Not working. One of the other things they're doing, mass migration. They don't care about culture. They don't care about people. They don't care about tradition. They care about
who's behind all that, though. That's where Tim and I'll have to do a separate video to break because I'm not going to be. I need to have my I's dotted and T's crossed. But my counter to Tim, this is a great rant by Tim. My counter would be, I think, almost for literally every single point, except some of the sunflower country stuff, but every other point I can tie it back to that same country.
Numbers, growth numbers. They need people, they need energy. They're not getting the energy, they're not getting the birth rates. They're going to bring in mass migrants to use.
And not as a vassal state. I can tie it back to that country and how it fits their interests. Maybe they started as a vassal state for us, like an empty, listless vessel. Remember DeSantis said that about MAGA. Maybe it started like that, but right now it's a symbiotic relationship. I don't even know where it starts, where it ends.
For menial labor, whatever they can do. I'm not convinced it'll work. When Syria resists, we go to war. But we still have a problem. We didn't get the Qatar-Turkey pipeline. We did not get the energy. Here's an idea. Blow up Nord Stream.
Yep.
Send Hunter Biden into Ukraine to work on an energy company. Overthrow the established government. Bring in a pro-U.S. government who is now going to give Ukraine to NATO and the EU, which then puts Russia in a difficult position because Russia's a gas station, basically. And then Ukraine would cut them off from the Black Sea so they can't export their oil, and they're not going to be able to charge the prices they want through their Gazprom pipeline in Ukraine. So what does Russia say? We've lost the soft power battle. NATO's expanding. The U.S. is getting what they want. We go to war. We're going to secure this and make sure they can't cut off our trade route to the Black Sea, which goes to the Bosphorus into the Mediterranean. This is, and now ultimately to the point of, why does Israel matter? It is an ally of the United States that basically lets us do whatever we want. We use it for mass surveillance and weapons manufacturing. And so the U.S. says, don't F with our foreign policy. When Donald Trump got in, they bring him in the secure room and they say, here's our plan and here's what we're doing. And Trump said no. And they said, what? We've been working on this for 50 years. You're not going to screw up our plan. Mm-hmm. They have a list of countries they want to invade. Have you seen I forgot the guy's name. People in the chat will absolutely know this is. He said, here's a list of 7 countries in the Middle East the U.S. wants to invade, and we've invaded or toppled like 5 of them, Iran being one of them. Trump made the mistake of bringing in people like Bolton. I think that was a favor to Sheldon Adelstein or whatever, and Bolton wanted to invade Iran as well. Trump goes in and says, I'm not going to do this plan. We're going to secure our borders. We're going to pull out of the Middle East. We're going to pull out of Syria. And what do they say? We will destroy you.
And that ties into everything that's happening to Trump. Tim is on point. That's why it makes it frustrating. On point about everything, except connecting the final dots that need to be connected.
Jack Posobiec made a great point. Mike Johnson goes into the skiff with the deep state. He comes out and says, everything I thought before walking in that room is wrong. And I hereby now say Israel #1, and I'll give them whatever they want. It is a weird deflection. And I think it is based on limited understanding. And I got to be honest, when you look at the bigger picture, and I don't know everything about this. There's a lot of confidential information I don't have, and that is the overwhelming majority of it. So I think everyone is probably wrong on this, myself included. But you take a look at something like Pizzagate, which is a really great example of how they shut down the actual calling out of empire and influence. And people noticed in WikiLeaks emails strange things saying, is it better to play dominoes on pizza or pasta? And what does that mean? It can mean a lot of things. What happens? Someone makes up on the spot, just one date appeared.
Okay, this is he's bad. He's bad now. But the rant up to that point was very good, and I'll just end with this. You see all these little things happen, and this is not what a state that is like the sunflower country, Ukraine. They're an empty, listless vessel of United States corruption and other corruption too, allegedly. That's what they are. There's no Ukraine affecting us. No, we're using them. This is different. That country over there warned the Biden administration, this is news here, that if the International Criminal Court issues arrest warrants against their country leaders, it will take retaliatory steps against the Palestinian Authority that could lead to its collapse. Does that sound like a country that is taking orders from us or a country that's giving orders?
Middle MAGA.